The morning light filtered through the curtains as Soohyun methodically packed her belongings into cardboard boxes. Each item she touched carried memories of her life with Donghwan, memories that now felt tainted by his betrayal. Her phone buzzed continuously with messages from friends offering support, but their words felt hollow against the weight of her isolation. And if you want a handsome CEO in your life and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. Standing in their shared bedroom, now half empty, Soohyun folded her clothes with mechanical precision. The messages on her phone ranged from sympathetic to angry, with close friends expressing their disbelief at Donghwan's actions. "We're here for you," they wrote, but Soohyun knew they couldn't understand the depth of her devastation. After 15 years of marriage, she found herself starting over at 42. The reality of her situation hit harder when she attended the launch party for the new season of Star Dreams, the reality show that had effectively ended her marriage. She hadn't planned to go, but something compelled her to witness it firsthand. The venue sparkled with camera flashes and celebrity smiles, but Soohyun remained in the shadows, watching her husband from across the room. Donghwan stood near the stage, his attention completely focused on Jia, the show's rising star. At 28, Jia possessed the kind of effortless beauty that made Soohyun painfully aware of her own age. She watched as Donghwan laughed at something Jia said, his hand casually touching her lower back. It was the same gesture he used to share with Soohyun at social events, a small sign of intimacy that now felt like a knife twisting in her chest. The party continued around her, a blur of faces and voices celebrating the show's success. Industry professionals clinked glasses and made deals, while reporters snapped photos of the new couple. Soohyun noticed how Donghwan positioned himself to catch the camera's attention, something he'd learned to do over his years as a television producer. He had always been ambitious, but she never imagined his ambition would cost her their marriage. Unable to bear any more of the spectacle, Soohyun left the party. The cool evening air helped clear her head as she walked without direction through the busy streets of Seoul. She found herself entering a small cafe, seeking refuge in its warm atmosphere. The place was mostly empty, with soft jazz playing in the background. She ordered a green tea and chose a corner table, hoping to gather her thoughts. The tears she'd held back at the party threatened to spill over, but she refused to break down in public. As she struggled to maintain her composure, a gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Soohyun looked up to find a man in his mid-40s standing beside her table. He wore a well-tailored suit that suggested success, but his expression carried genuine warmth. Something about his presence put her at ease, despite her desire to be alone. "No, please," she gestured to the empty chair, quickly wiping her eyes. The man introduced himself as Hyunwoo and asked if she'd like another tea, noticing her cup was empty. His kindness was unexpected, and for the first time that day, Soohyun felt her guard lowering slightly. They talked about simple things at first, the cafe's atmosphere, the unseasonably warm weather, the changing neighborhood. Hyunwoo didn't press when he noticed her distress, instead sharing stories about his own life that somehow made Soohyun feel less alone. He spoke about his work in design, though he never mentioned his position as CEO. His passion for creating spaces that could transform people's lives resonated with Soohyun, reminding her of her own abandoned dreams in interior design. As they talked, the weight of the day's events began to lift slightly. Hyunwoo's presence offered a brief respite from her pain, though she knew the relief was temporary. She didn't share the details of her situation, but something in his manner suggested he understood loss and renewal. The cafe was closing when they finally prepared to leave. Hyunwoo handed her his business card, suggesting they might meet again to discuss design. Soohyun accepted it politely, though she had no intention of calling. She had enough complications in her life, without adding new ones. Walking home in the darkness, Soohyun felt slightly steadier than before. The chance encounter with Hyunwoo, while brief, had reminded her that life continued beyond her current pain. She didn't know then that this seemingly random meeting would become the catalyst for profound changes in her life, nor that the man from the cafe would play a crucial role in her journey toward healing and self-discovery. The design exhibition hall buzzed with activity as Soo-yeon entered, clutching the invitation Hyunwoo had sent. After their cafe meeting, she'd been surprised to receive his call. Even more surprised to learn he was the CEO of one of Korea's leading design firms. The space around her showcased cutting-edge interior designs, each installation more impressive than the last. Hyunwoo greeted her at the entrance, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit. He introduced her to various industry professionals, presenting her as a talented designer rather than focusing on her previous role as a homemaker. With each introduction, Soo-yeon felt a piece of her old confidence returning. These people didn't know about her failed marriage or public humiliation. They saw her solely through the lens of her professional potential. During the exhibition, Hyunwoo guided her through different installations, asking for her opinions and insights. She found herself speaking with increasing authority about color theories, spatial arrangements, and sustainable design practices. Knowledge she thought she'd forgotten came flooding back as she discussed projects with other designers. A particular installation caught her attention, a community center design that incorporated healing elements for trauma survivors. As she examined the layout, Hyunwoo watched her with interest. "What do you think could improve this space?" he asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Soo-yeon began pointing out various elements, suggesting modifications that would make the space more welcoming and therapeutic. Other designers gathered around, listening to her ideas with growing respect. She didn't notice Hyunwoo's satisfied smile as she confidently explained her vision for creating environments that could aid in emotional healing. The evening progressed, and Soo-yeon found herself deeply engaged in discussions about current design trends and social responsibility in architecture. A senior designer even offered her a consultation opportunity, impressed by her understanding of therapeutic spaces. For the first time since her marriage collapsed, she felt professionally valued. After the main event, Hyunwoo invited her to join a smaller group for dinner. Over traditional Korean cuisine, he shared his vision for a new charitable initiative, designing spaces for women rebuilding their lives after personal crises. The project immediately resonated with Soo-yeon, though she kept her personal connection to the cause private. "Would you be interested in leading this project?" Hyunwoo asked, catching her off guard. The other designers at the table looked at her expectantly, having witnessed her expertise throughout the evening. Soo-yeon felt a mixture of excitement and fear. This was an opportunity to transform her pain into something meaningful, but it also meant stepping fully into the public eye. The conversation turned to practical matters, budget considerations, timeline planning, and community outreach strategies. Soo-yeon found herself taking notes, her mind already filling with ideas for creating spaces that could offer both physical and emotional sanctuary to women in transition. As the dinner wrapped up, Hyunwoo walked her to her taxi. "You don't have to decide immediately," he said, sensing her hesitation. "But I've seen how people respond to your ideas. You have a gift for understanding what spaces need to heal." Back home, Soo-yeon sat at her desk, surrounded by the boxes she still hadn't unpacked. She pulled out her old design portfolio, dusty from years of neglect. Page after page showed the dreams she'd set aside when she chose to support Donghwan's career instead of pursuing her own. The next morning, she called Hyunwoo to accept the position. Within days, she found herself working in a bright office at his company, developing concepts for the charitable initiative. The project quickly became more than just work. It became a mission to create spaces where women like herself could find strength and renewal. As she immersed herself in the project, Soo-yeon noticed subtle changes in herself. Her posture straightened, her voice grew stronger, and she began dressing for success rather than hiding behind conservative clothes. The other designers treated her as an equal, valuing her input and seeking her advice on their own projects. The transformation wasn't just professional. Each day spent working on the project helped heal another small piece of her wounded spirit. She began to see her own experience not as an ending, but as a necessary step toward something meaningful. The women she hoped to help through this project became her motivation to push through her own pain. Hyunwoo proved to be a supportive mentor, offering guidance while trusting her vision for the project. His presence provided a stark contrast to Donghwan's controlling nature, though Soo-yeon carefully maintained professional boundaries, aware of her vulnerable emotional state. The charity project offices buzzed with activity as Soo-yeon and Hyun-woo reviewed architectural plans spread across a large conference table. Their collaboration had grown more natural over the weeks, with Soo-yeon gaining confidence in expressing her ideas. She noticed how Hyun-woo always leaned in slightly when she spoke, giving her his complete attention, a small gesture that made her feel valued. Their work on the Women's Support Center progressed steadily. Soo-yeon incorporated elements she wished she'd had during her own difficult transition: private consultation rooms with soundproofing for confidential conversations, communal spaces designed to foster connection without forcing interaction, and workshop areas where women could develop new skills. Each detail reflected her personal understanding of what healing required. The launch event for the project was scheduled at a prestigious venue, attracting attention from media and potential donors. As Soo-yeon prepared her presentation materials, she received an unexpected text message from her friend Minji. Donghwan knows about the event. He's been asking questions. The message sent a chill through her body, but she forced herself to focus on the task at hand. On the evening of the launch, the venue filled with supporters and media representatives. Soo-yeon stood at the podium, presenting her vision for the support center with passionate conviction. The audience responded warmly to her ideas, and she could see Hyun-woo nodding encouragingly from the front row. Then she noticed movement at the back of the room. Donghwan entered, his presence causing a ripple of whispers. He wasn't alone. Jia, the reality show star, clung to his arm, her youth and beauty deliberately emphasized. They positioned themselves where Soo-yeon couldn't avoid seeing them, Donghwan's face, wearing the smirk she'd grown to dread during their marriage. "This is a publicity stunt," Donghwan's voice cut through her presentation. "She's using these women's stories to remake her image after our divorce." His interruption created instant chaos. Cameras turned away from Soo-yeon's presentation slides to capture the drama unfolding. Hyun-woo stood immediately, his calm authority filling the room. "Security, please escort these uninvited guests out." His voice carried no anger, only firm resolution. As Donghwan was led away, he shouted accusations about Soo-yeon's character, each word designed to undermine her credibility. The incident left Soo-yeon shaken, but she forced herself to continue. Her voice trembled slightly as she resumed her presentation, until she caught sight of a woman in the audience, one of the potential center residents, nodding encouragingly. Drawing strength from this silent support, Soo-yeon finished her speech, earning genuine applause. After the event, Soo-yeon sat alone in the empty venue, emotions warring inside her. Hyun-woo found her there, sitting quietly beside her until she was ready to talk. "Why can't I move forward?" she asked, more to herself than to him. "Every time I think I'm making progress, the past pulls me back." "The past only has the power we give it," Hyun-woo responded gently. "You're not the same person you were when you were with him. I see it every day in how you work, how you carry yourself." His words carried no romantic undertone, only sincere observation and support. Yet Soo-yeon felt caught between two worlds. The safe, professional space she'd built with Hyun-woo and the project team represented her future, one where she had agency and purpose. But Donghwan's appearance reminded her of the vulnerability that still lingered, the fear of public humiliation and judgment that had originally driven her into isolation. The following days brought a flurry of media coverage. Some outlets focused on the project's merits, while others seized on Donghwan's accusations, turning Soo-yeon's personal pain into entertainment. She forced herself to avoid reading the articles, instead throwing herself into refining the center's designs. Hyun-woo increased his support subtly, ensuring she had resources and backing to continue her work. He never mentioned the incident directly, but created opportunities for her to showcase her expertise in smaller, controlled settings where she could rebuild her confidence. The true challenge lay in Soo-yeon's internal struggle. Each decision now carried extra weight. Should she maintain a low profile to avoid further confrontation, or stand firmly behind her vision for the center? The project itself demanded visibility, but her instincts, shaped by years of accommodating Donghwan's needs, urged her to retreat. The evening light faded as Soo-yeon and Hyun-woo worked late in his office, reviewing donor proposals for the Women's Center. A comfortable silence had settled between them when Hyunwoo suddenly set down his papers and turned to face her directly. His expression carried a weight she hadn't seen before. "I need to tell you something about why this project matters so much to me," he began. Soo-yeon noticed his hands tighten slightly on his armrests as he shared his story. 5 years ago, his wife had left him for his business partner, taking not only his trust but also half of his company's contracts. The betrayal had nearly destroyed everything he'd built. "I lost myself for a while," he admitted, his voice steady but vulnerable. "I questioned every decision I'd ever made, every relationship I trusted. The business survived, but I had to rebuild myself from scratch." His words resonated deeply with Soo-yeon's own experience, creating a new layer of understanding between them. This revelation shifted something in their dynamic. Soo-yeon found herself opening up about her own healing journey, sharing how each day brought both victories and setbacks. They talked about the shame that came with public betrayal, the struggle to trust again, and the unexpected ways healing could appear. Their conversation inspired a new direction for the project. The next morning, Soo-yeon proposed expanding their support center's mission to include a storytelling initiative. They would create a space where women could share their experiences of overcoming betrayal and rebuilding their lives, transforming personal pain into collective strength. The fundraising event they organized reflected this vision. Instead of traditional presentations, they created an immersive experience. The venue was divided into spaces that represented different stages of healing. A dark room where visitors could hear anonymous stories of betrayal, a transition space filled with messages of hope, and finally, a bright gallery showcasing success stories and future dreams. Women began coming forward to share their stories. A former executive who lost her career after her husband spread rumors about her mental stability. A young mother who discovered her spouse's double life. A successful artist whose partner stole her work and claimed it as his own. Each story added another thread to the tapestry of resilience they were weaving. Soo-yeon found herself drawing strength from these women's experiences. Their courage in sharing their stories helped her see her own journey differently. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed into something purposeful. She started keeping a journal, documenting her own healing process alongside the project's development. During one particularly powerful session, a participant spoke about turning her husband's betrayal into fuel for her own success. "The worst thing we can do is let their actions define our future," she declared. The words struck Soo-yeon forcefully, making her realize how much of her identity she'd still tied to being Dong-hwan's betrayed wife. Hyunwoo noticed the impact of this moment on Soo-yeon. Later, he shared resources that had helped him during his own recovery: books, therapy techniques, and meditation practices. Their professional relationship deepened into a friendship built on mutual understanding and respect for each other's healing journeys. The project gained momentum as more women came forward to participate. They began offering workshops on financial independence, emotional healing, and professional development. Each success story strengthened Soo-yeon's conviction that pain could become a catalyst for positive change. Through working with these women, Soo-yeon gradually rediscovered parts of herself she'd forgotten. Her design skills flourished as she created spaces that reflected both beauty and functionality. Her natural ability to connect with others, once overshadowed by Dong-hwan's dominant personality, emerged stronger than before. The morning headlines hit like a physical blow. Reality star's producer ex-wife uses trauma for profit, screamed the entertainment sites. Dong-hwan had orchestrated a media campaign against Soo-yeon, twisting her work with the Women's Center into a calculated revenge plot. The articles painted her as a bitter ex-wife exploiting vulnerable women to rebuild her reputation. Soo-yeon sat in her office, hands trembling as she scrolled through the coverage. Dong-hwan had given multiple interviews, sharing carefully edited versions of their marriage's end. He portrayed himself as the victim of a controlling wife who had driven him away, forcing him to find happiness with Jia. Even more damaging were the supposed insider accounts from women claiming the support center was misusing funds. Hyunwoo arrived at her office without announcement, carrying coffee and a determined expression. He'd already assembled a crisis management team to address the allegations. "We're not hiding," he stated firmly, setting down a comprehensive strategy document. "Every accusation they've made is an opportunity to showcase the real work we're doing." Together, they crafted a response plan that emphasized transparency. They invited media outlets to tour the center, arranged interviews with women who had genuinely benefited from their programs, and released detailed financial reports showing exactly how donations were being used. Hyunwoo stood beside Soo-yeon during every interview, his presence a steady reminder that she wasn't facing this alone. The pressure intensified when Donghwan's media allies began questioning Soo-yeon's relationship with Hyunwoo. Implications of impropriety threatened to undermine everything they'd built. During a particularly challenging interview, the reporter pressed about their personal connection. Hyunwoo responded with quiet dignity, "I'm proud to support someone who transformed personal pain into community healing." That's the only story here. Late one evening, as they reviewed the latest media coverage, Soo-yeon finally voiced her deepest fear. "What if he's right? What if I am just using these women's pain to heal my own?" The question hung heavy in the air between them. Hyunwoo set aside his tablet and turned to face her fully. Their conversation that night marked a turning point. Hyunwoo shared how his own recovery had taught him that healing rarely happens in isolation. He spoke about the difference between exploiting pain and transforming it into purpose. As they talked, Soo-yeon began to understand that her journey and the center's mission were inextricably linked, not because she was using one to justify the other, but because authentic healing creates ripples that touch others. The media storm forced them to examine every aspect of their work more carefully. They implemented additional oversight measures, created clear boundaries between personal stories and public advocacy, and strengthened their support systems for both staff and participants. What Donghwan intended as destruction became refinement. Throughout this period, Soo-yeon noticed subtle changes in how Hyunwoo supported her. His encouragement became more personal, his protectiveness more evident. During one crisis meeting, their hands brushed as they reached for the same document, and the brief contact sent unexpected warmth through her body. She found herself increasingly aware of his presence, even as she tried to maintain professional distance. Their shared battle against public scrutiny created an intimacy neither had anticipated. Working late nights, sharing meals during strategy sessions, and supporting each other through media attacks built a foundation of trust that went beyond mere friendship. Yet both remained careful, conscious of the vulnerability that came with their positions. The breaking point came during a board meeting where they presented their crisis management results. As Soo-yeon confidently addressed the directors, proving how they'd turned negative publicity into increased awareness and support, she caught Hyunwoo watching her with unmistakable pride and something deeper. The realization that her feelings might be reciprocated both thrilled and terrified her. The success of the Women's Center culminated in an invitation for Soo-yeon to deliver a keynote speech at a national conference on social innovation. The auditorium filled with hundreds of professionals, activists, and supporters. Standing at the podium, Soo-yeon felt a profound shift in her confidence. This was no longer about her personal story, but about the collective impact they'd created. Her speech detailed their approach to healing through design, explaining how physical spaces could support emotional recovery. The audience responded with genuine engagement, many taking notes as she shared specific examples of how their center had helped women rebuild their lives. For the first time, Soo-yeon felt truly seen for her professional achievements rather than her past. However, Donghwan had been monitoring her rising success with growing resentment. The reality show that had sparked their divorce was losing viewers, and his relationship with Ji-ah had begun generating negative publicity. In a calculated move to regain public attention, he released private details about their marriage to a tabloid journalist. The article exposed intimate moments from their relationship, including Soo-yeon's struggles with fertility and private conversations about adoption. Donghwan painted these vulnerable moments as evidence of her instability, suggesting that her current success was built on manipulation and deceit. He included private photographs and text messages taken out of context, violating the trust they'd once shared. The revelation hit Soo-yeon hard. Despite her professional accomplishments, the public exposure of her private pain threatened to unravel her carefully rebuilt confidence. She found herself second-guessing every interaction, wondering if others were judging her based on Donghwan's revelations rather than her work. The center's staff rallied around her, but Soohyun noticed some donors becoming hesitant. Corporate sponsors worried about association with controversy, and a few board members suggested she step back temporarily. The weight of these reactions pressed against her chest, making it difficult to maintain the professional facade she'd worked so hard to build. During this period, old insecurities resurfaced. Memories of fertility treatments, the hope and disappointment that had strained their marriage, and the ultimate realization that they would never have children. All these private struggles now became public fodder for debate. Some commentators even suggested that her work with the Women's Center was merely a substitute for her inability to have a family of her own. The pressure began affecting her work. During presentations, she found herself stumbling over words, hyper-aware of audience reactions. In meetings, she second-guessed her decisions, worried that others might see the vulnerable woman Donghwan had described rather than the capable professional she'd become. The walls she'd built between her past and present began to crack. Support came from an unexpected source when one of the center's earliest participants, a woman named Minji, organized a response. Minji gathered testimonials from women who had rebuilt their lives through the center's programs. Each story emphasized how Soohyun's understanding of their pain had helped create genuine paths to healing. Their voices created a counter-narrative to Donghwan's accusations, highlighting the authenticity that came from shared experience. Yet despite this support, Soohyun struggled with mounting anxiety. The constant scrutiny of her personal life threatened to overshadow everything she'd built. Late one night, alone in her office, she found herself questioning whether she had the strength to continue facing such public exposure of her private pain. The ghosts of her past seemed to gather around her. The young woman who had given up her design career to support her husband's ambitions, the wife who had endured fertility treatments in silence, the betrayed partner who had blamed herself for her marriage's failure. These shadows threatened to eclipse the confident professional she'd worked so hard to become. During a particularly difficult afternoon at the center, Soohyun encountered Jimin, a middle-aged woman who had rebuilt her life after discovering her husband's decade-long deception. Jimin found Soohyun sitting alone in the center's garden, visibly struggling with the weight of recent events. Instead of offering conventional sympathy, Jimin shared how watching Soohyun face public scrutiny had given her the courage to continue her own journey. "When I read those articles about your private life," Jimin explained, her voice steady and clear, "I saw how you came to work the next day, continuing to help others despite your pain. That showed me real strength isn't about never falling, it's about how we rise afterward." Her words penetrated the fog of self-doubt that had surrounded Soohyun, offering a new perspective on her current struggles. This conversation catalyzed a shift in Soohyun's approach to the situation. She began documenting how personal vulnerability had enhanced, rather than diminished, her ability to create meaningful change. The very experiences Donghwan tried to use against her had actually deepened her understanding of the women she served. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo had been quietly organizing something extraordinary. Without informing Soohyun, he arranged an evening event titled Voices of Change, gathering successful women from various fields who had faced similar public scrutiny and emerged stronger. The invitation came to Soohyun as a surprise, requesting her presence as a guest rather than an organizer. The event space transformed into a testament to resilience. Photographs lined the walls, not just of successful outcomes, but of the messy middle stages of transformation. Each image captured moments of struggle alongside triumph, creating a more honest narrative about recovery and growth. Hyunwoo had understood that authenticity, not perfection, was the true foundation of their work. When Soohyun arrived, she found herself surrounded by women whose stories echoed aspects of her own. A famous actress who had rebuilt her career after a public scandal shared how vulnerability became her strength. A corporate executive described using her experience of betrayal to create more supportive workplace policies. Their stories wove together, creating a tapestry of shared resilience. The evening's highlight came when Hyunwoo took the stage. His speech departed from his usual professional demeanor as he shared how witnessing Soo-yeon's dedication had transformed his understanding of courage. He spoke about watching her turn private pain into public purpose, never compromising her vision despite enormous pressure. His words carried an undercurrent of personal admiration that didn't go unnoticed by the attendees. As the event continued, women began spontaneously sharing their stories, creating an atmosphere of collective healing. The space filled with a powerful energy as each revelation strengthened the bonds between them. Soo-yeon observed this organic community forming, understanding that her personal struggle had helped create a safe space for others to embrace their own truth. Later that evening, standing among the photographs and stories, Soo-yeon felt a profound shift in her perspective. The exposure of her private pain, which had felt like a weapon in Dong-hwan's hands, had actually become a bridge connecting her to a larger community of survivors and champions. Her vulnerability, rather than weakening her position, had authenticated her leadership. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Soo-yeon prepared to deliver what would become her most significant speech. The event, originally planned as a standard program update, had evolved into something more profound. Security personnel discreetly positioned themselves throughout the venue, aware of the possibility of another disruption from Dong-hwan. Soo-yeon stood at the podium, scanning the faces before her. Representatives from women's organizations, corporate sponsors, and media outlets filled the seats. She began by acknowledging the recent controversies, not as apologies but as stepping stones that had led to deeper understanding. Her voice, once hesitant when speaking publicly, now carried authority born from authentic experience. "Our strength doesn't come from hiding our wounds," she declared, her words resonating through the space. "It comes from transforming them into bridges that connect us to others who are still finding their way." She shared statistics from the center's first year: hundreds of women served, dozens of success stories, and a growing network of support that stretched across the country. The audience leaned forward as she revealed their next initiative, a nationwide program to establish similar centers in other cities. She outlined how their model of combining design psychology with practical support had created measurable positive outcomes. Each point she made was backed by data, demonstrating how personal healing could catalyze social change. Halfway through her presentation, movement at the back of the hall caught her attention. Dong-hwan entered, his presence commanding attention as always. But this time, something was different. He looked less confident, almost desperate. Jia wasn't by his side, and his usual media entourage was notably absent. Soo-yeon paused briefly, meeting his gaze. In that moment, she recognized something she hadn't seen before: the smallness of his attempts to maintain control. Instead of feeling threatened, she felt an unexpected wave of compassion, not for him specifically, but for the pattern of hurt people hurting others. Without acknowledging his presence directly, she continued her speech, focusing on the transformative power of choosing growth over bitterness. The audience remained captivated as she shared stories of women who had reclaimed their lives, each example illustrating how personal crisis could become a catalyst for positive change. Dong-hwan attempted to interrupt, calling out accusations from the back of the hall. But before security could react, something remarkable happened. The women in the audience, many of them survivors of similar betrayals, stood up one by one. They didn't speak or confront him. They simply stood, their silent solidarity creating a powerful statement. The moment marked a visible shift in power dynamics. Dong-hwan, faced with this wall of quiet strength, seemed to shrink. He left the auditorium without further disruption, his departure barely noticed as Soo-yeon continued speaking. The audience's focus remained fixed on her message of transformation and hope. As she concluded her speech, the applause was more than just polite acknowledgement. It carried the weight of shared experience and collective triumph. Women approached the stage afterward, sharing their own stories and asking how they could contribute to expanding the center's work. In that crowded auditorium, Soo-yeon finally understood that she had transcended her role as a victim of betrayal. She had become a catalyst for change, not despite her wounds, but because of how she had chosen to heal them. The very exposure that Dong Hwan had intended to shame her had instead created countless connections with others on similar journeys. After the powerful speech, Soo-yeon and Hyunwoo found themselves alone in the venue's rooftop garden. The city lights sparkled below them, creating an intimate atmosphere that matched their heightened emotional state. The evening's success had brought them to a crossroads they could no longer ignore. Hyunwoo turned to face Soo-yeon, his professional demeanor giving way to something more vulnerable. "I've watched you transform from someone who doubted her own shadow to a force that changes lives," he began, his voice carrying a depth of feeling that made Soo-yeon's heart race. "But I need to know if there's room in your life for something beyond our work together." The question hung in the air between them, weighted with months of unspoken feelings and careful boundaries. Soo-yeon found herself examining the journey that had brought them to this moment. She thought about how different his support felt from Dong Hwan's controlling love, how Hyunwoo had consistently empowered rather than diminished her. "I've been afraid," she admitted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Afraid that any personal relationship would undermine what we've built here. That people would say I'd just replaced one successful man with another." The words came easier now, carrying the authenticity she'd learned to embrace. "But I've also been afraid of how much I've come to depend on your presence in my life." Their conversation deepened as they shared their fears and hopes. Hyunwoo spoke about his own hesitation, worried that expressing his feelings might make her feel pressured or compromise the safe space she created for herself. They discussed how their shared experiences of betrayal had shaped their approach to trust and intimacy. As the evening air grew cooler, their physical proximity increased naturally. When Hyunwoo reached for her hand, the contact felt both thrilling and peaceful. Their first kiss wasn't driven by passion, but by a deep understanding of each other's journey to this moment. It carried the weight of their shared experiences and the promise of something built on mutual respect. However, their moment of connection was interrupted by an urgent call. One of their staff members reported that a tabloid was preparing to publish new allegations about Dong Hwan. The story claimed he had been orchestrating a campaign of harassment against the center's participants, using private investigators to gather compromising information. The revelation struck Soo-yeon like a physical blow. While she had moved forward personally and professionally, Dong Hwan had apparently sunk deeper into his obsession with destroying what she'd built. The timing of this news, just as she'd opened herself to new possibilities with Hyunwoo, felt like a cruel reminder of how the past could intrude on the present. The information presented an immediate crisis for the center. The privacy and safety of their participants had been their highest priority, and the idea that someone had violated that trust threatened everything they'd worked to build. Hyunwoo immediately shifted into crisis management mode, but the intimacy they'd just shared lingered in his gentle touches and concerned glances. As they worked late into the night, developing strategies to protect their participants and prepare for the media storm, Soo-yeon realized that this crisis would test not just their professional partnership, but their emerging personal relationship. The question wasn't just about how they would handle the immediate threat, but how they would navigate the complex intersection of their public and private lives. The press conference room at the Grand Seoul Hotel filled with journalists and cameras as Dong Hwan prepared to make his announcement. His appearance had been carefully orchestrated, with Jia standing supportively by his side. The reality show star's visible pregnancy created exactly the sensational image he'd hoped for, providing the perfect backdrop for his final attempt to destroy Soo-yeon's reputation. Dong Hwan spoke with practiced emotion, describing how Soo-yeon's instability during their marriage had driven him away. He claimed her inability to have children had made her bitter, suggesting that her work with the Women's Center stemmed from this resentment. The pregnancy announcement served as his coup de grace, proof, he implied, that the problem had always been with Soo-yeon, not him. Watching the broadcast from the center's office, Soo-yeon felt an unexpected sense of calm. The words that once would have shattered her now seemed small, desperate attempts to maintain control over a narrative that no longer belonged to him. She turned to Hyunwoo, who had been watching her reaction carefully, and made a decision that would change everything. Within an hour, Soo-yeon stood before the same press corps. The room hushed as she took the podium, her presence commanding attention without theatrics. "Today," she began, "I want to tell you the true story of why my marriage ended." Her voice carried the strength of someone who had finally claimed their own narrative. She revealed how she had discovered Donghwan's manipulation of other women long before Jia. How he had gaslit her about their fertility struggles, hiding his own medical issues while letting her endure endless treatments. How she had chosen to end the marriage not as a victim, but as someone who refused to participate in further deception. The room fell silent as she shared documented evidence of Donghwan's pattern of emotional abuse, including his recent attempts to intimidate women at the center. Her presentation wasn't vengeful. Instead, it demonstrated how personal tragedy could transform into societal change. She spoke about how understanding manipulation and control had helped her create more effective support systems for other women. As she concluded her statement, Soo-yeon looked directly into the cameras. "To every woman who has been told that her pain is too messy, too inconvenient, or too personal to share, your story matters. Your healing matters. And most importantly, your truth matters." The words resonated through the room, carrying the weight of both personal and collective liberation. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Social media erupted with support as women across the country began sharing their own stories of reclaiming their narratives. Donghwan's carefully constructed image crumbled as more women came forward, describing similar patterns of manipulation in their interactions with him. In the aftermath, Soo-yeon and Hyunwoo expanded their vision for the center. They developed new programs focusing on media literacy and emotional manipulation awareness, helping women recognize and resist gaslighting attempts. Their work evolved from healing past trauma to preventing future abuse through education and empowerment. The final scene unfolded at the center's first anniversary celebration. Soo-yeon stood among hundreds of women whose lives had been touched by their work. As she watched them interact, sharing stories and supporting each other, she realized that her journey had never been about proving Donghwan wrong. It had been about proving herself right, about the power of vulnerability, the strength in community, and the healing that comes from reclaiming one's own story. Hyunwoo joined her on stage for the closing remarks, their professional and personal partnership now a testament to how love could grow from mutual respect and shared purpose. Together, they announced plans to expand their model internationally, creating a network of centers that would support women in reclaiming their narratives and rebuilding their lives. As the celebration continued around them, Soo-yeon understood that her story had become something larger than herself. It had transformed into a beacon of hope for others, proving that the end of one chapter could indeed become the beginning of a far more meaningful journey.